All right, so you're locked in, ready for another deep dive. And let me tell you, today we're tackling a classic. We're going deep into Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
Yeah.
Specifically, Chapter 1, Laying Plans. Now, I know what you're thinking, ancient military strategy, right? But hold on, this isn't just some dusty old text. We're talking about timeless wisdom here, the kind of strategic thinking that can be applied anywhere, from the battlefield to the boardroom.
Absolutely. I mean, so many people have heard those little sound bites from Sun Tzu, like passed around. Yeah. But this deep dive, getting to that very first chapter, is crucial. It's like understanding the foundation, right? The prep work before you even, swing that first punch.
Yeah. It's all about what needs to be done before you make a move. So that's our mission today, to uncover these crucial principles that Sun Tzu lays out, the ones he considered absolutely vital for setting yourself up for success in any kind of competitive situation.
Like understanding the recipe before you even turn the oven on.
Exactly. Now, Sun Tzu kicks things off with a pretty...
stark statement.
Yeah, a stark statement. He says that warfare is a matter of vital importance to the state, a question of life and death.
Okay.
High stakes, right.
Big time.
But then he immediately dives into what he calls the 5 constant factors.
5 constant factors.
So what's the key takeaway here? What's the big idea behind this initial list?
The real core insight with these 5 factors is this. Victory doesn't just come from, raw power or some clever tactic you pull out at the last second. It's deeply rooted in these pre-existing conditions, things that are already in place.
Right.
The very first one he talks about is the moral law. And now this isn't about, getting all philosophical or anything. This is about the unity, the bond between the people and their leader. It's the idea that real strength, like lasting strength, comes from internal unity, from a shared purpose, not just, external force. Like if your team or your stakeholders, whoever's involved.
Right. They don't believe in the mission.
If they don't buy in, if they're not on board, you're fighting an uphill battle right from the start.
Totally. It's like if everyone's pulling in different directions, your efforts are just going to get scattered.
It's diluted, yeah.
All right. So the second factor Sun Tzu talks about is heaven, which, might sound a little out there.
Realistical.
Yeah, a little out there at first. But what's the practical takeaway here? What does this actually mean for us, in the real world?
So the core insight with heaven is that no matter how carefully you plan, there are always going to be forces outside of your control. Right?
Yeah.
You can't control everything.
Right.
So Sun Tzu, he was really tuned into this. He recognized that true strategy, effective strategy, involves understanding and adapting to the environment, the timing, all of it. Like seasons, weather patterns, even market trends, if we're talking about business. It's about taking those potential obstacles and turning them into opportunities, like ignoring these factors. That's like launching a new product without even considering the economy, what's happening out there.
Yeah, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
All right, so then we have Earth, which feels a little bit more...
grounded.
Yeah, literally more grounded. So what's the key understanding here? How does Earth factor into this?
So with Earth, what's crucial to understand is that the physical landscape, the actual terrain, it's not just some background. It actively shapes what strategies are even possible.
Okay.
So understanding the terrain, like the distances, the different types of ground, areas that are vulnerable versus areas that are secure, that dictates your options.
Right.
And also your limitations. I mean, you wouldn't plan a siege on a fortress that's like nestled in some impenetrable mountain pass, would you?
Makes sense, yeah. The environment itself is like giving you advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so the fourth factor shifts our attention to the commander. Now, Sun Tzu doesn't just say, a good leader. He actually outlines 5 key virtues. So what's the underlying message here? What's he really saying about effective leadership?
What's so fascinating about how Sun Tzu breaks this down is the emphasis on balance. He's not saying be the best at this one thing. The insight is that effective leadership is about possessing this blend of different qualities.
Okay.
You need wisdom, right? That's for strategic thinking. You need sincerity to build trust, benevolence to foster that loyalty, courage, obviously, for making those tough decisions, taking action, and then strictness, which is about maintaining discipline. Like if you're neglecting any one of those, it weakens your ability to really command effectively.
So it's like a holistic view of leadership.
Absolutely.
Not just one-dimensional.
Yeah.
All right, so then we have the fifth and final constant factor, which is method and discipline.
Method and discipline.
This sounds like the kind of operational backbone of any endeavor. What's the core idea here?
The insight here is that even if you have the most brilliant strategy in the world, it all falls apart if you don't have a solid operational foundation.
Right.
This covers everything, from the structure of your organization, clear lines of command, who's doing what. But then also, and this is huge, logistics, like actually getting resources where they need to be.
Yeah.
And then sound financial management. This isn't like an afterthought. This is like built into the possibility of success.
Yeah, it's not sexy, but it's like absolutely essential.
It's the nuts and bolts.
So these 5 constant factors, moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline, these are the bedrock, the things you really need to think deeply about before you even start thinking about specific tactics.
And understanding them, Sun Tzu's saying, that gives you a crucial advantage when it comes to predicting outcomes.
Yeah.
It's like you're setting yourself up to see what's coming.
Absolutely. But, it's not enough to just understand these in isolation.
Right, you got to apply them.
Yeah, you got to put them to work. So Sun Tzu gives us a practical framework for doing exactly that in any kind of competitive situation. He calls them the 7 considerations for comparison.
The 7 considerations.
So this is where we actually take those 5 factors and we start assessing the landscape. We're comparing ourselves to our opponent.
You're sizing things up.
Exactly. So Sun Tzu gives us 7 very specific questions that we should be asking when we're facing, a potential conflict, a challenge, any kind of competition. And we're going to go through them one by one.
Okay.
All right, so the first one is, which of the 2 sovereigns is imbued with the moral law? So what's he really asking us here?
He's asking us to look at the leaders. Are the leaders, truly unified with their people, their team, whoever it is? Where does that fundamental alignment lie? Where's that willingness to strive towards that common goal?
And the second comparison is, which of the 2 generals has most ability?
Which, this goes right back to those 5 virtues of the commander.
Yeah.
Which one of these leaders embodies those qualities to a greater degree?
Okay, number 3. With whom lie the advantages derived from heaven and earth?
Heaven and earth.
So we're looking at the environmental factors, the terrain. Which side has those inherent natural advantages?
Right. Then number 4. On which side is discipline most rigorously enforced?
Okay.
And this goes back to that idea of method and discipline. Is there a clear structure? Are protocols being followed? Is the organization, actually efficient and reliable?
Right, those nuts and bolts. All right, number 5. Which army is stronger?
Which army is stronger?
Now, this might seem obvious, but it's not just about sheer numbers, right?
No, it's not just a head count.
It's about overall capability, the quality of your resources, how prepared your personnel are.
Exactly. And building on that, number 6. On which side are officers and men more highly trained? So, raw strength isn't enough. You need skill, you need expertise, and thorough preparation. That's paramount.
It's not just about showing up. All right, then the final question, number 7. In which army is there the greater constancy, both in reward and punishment?
So this is about fairness, about predictability. Are the expectations clear? And are the outcomes consistently tied to performance, both good and bad?
Is there, a system in place?
Is there a system? Yeah.
So what's so powerful about this, from Sun Tzu's perspective, is that by rigorously comparing these 7 aspects, you can get a really good understanding of the likely outcome before things even kick off.
Before you even engage.
Yeah, it's all about informed assessment, which leads to strategic foresight.
You're not just jumping in blind, you're doing your homework.
This really highlights the importance of planning and calculation, something Sun Tzu talks about constantly. He even says...
Yeah, one of favorites.
Yeah, he says, the general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple ere the battle is fought. The general who loses a battle makes but few calculations beforehand.
So clear, right?
Yeah, that really paints a picture of the difference between being prepared and not being prepared.
He's really underscoring that difference between a proactive, in-depth approach to analysis versus just reacting to things, not really thinking things through.
Yeah, winging it.
Winging it, exactly.
And those many calculations, that involves really diving deep into all these factors we've been talking about. It's like running through different scenarios in your head, understanding the potential consequences of different actions before they actually play out in reality.
Right, wargaming it out in your mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think this really speaks to why you, the listener, are here with us today. You want to gain that understanding. You want to do your due diligence so you're not caught flat-footed.
Right, so you're not just reacting all the time, you're ahead of the game.
And from this foundation of meticulous planning, Sun Tzu introduces one of his most famous and maybe controversial principles: deception.
All warfare is based on deception. Boom. It's such a powerful statement, and it really gets to the heart of his whole strategic philosophy.
Yeah, he's not messing around.
No, he's not. The fundamental idea is this. You want to create this mismatch between what your opponent perceives and what's actually true. You're misleading them about your capabilities, about your intentions, even your movements.
And he gives us some very specific examples. He says, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near.
It's all about crafting this, false narrative.
You're playing mind games.
You're in their head. And the strategic advantage of doing this is that it creates vulnerabilities in your opponent. If they misjudge your strength or your plans, they become predictable. And that makes them vulnerable to attack. You can exploit those gaps in their understanding.
Right, you're catching them off guard.
Exactly. You gain that element of surprise.
And it's not just about hiding your own strengths, right?
Right.
It's also about manipulating their perception.
You're feeding them information.
Yeah. Sun Tzu talks about, offering baits to lure the enemy into a certain position and feigning disorder to make them think you're weak.
Make them overconfident.
Yeah, so they make a mistake. It's really active misinformation. So building on this foundation of assessment and deception, Sun Tzu gives us some tactical guidelines for how to actually respond to different situations based on your analysis of the opposing force.
So he's saying, look, you've done your homework. You've assessed the situation. Now here's how you adapt your tactics.
So he says, if he is secure at all points, be prepared for him. If he is in superior strength, evade him.
So practical, right?
Yeah, it's like choose your battles. Know when to stand your ground and when to strategically withdraw.
When to live to fight another day.
Exactly. And then he goes on to say, if your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, so you're poking the bear.
They're using their emotions against it.
Right. And then he says, pretend to be weak, that he may grow arrogant.
Classic reverse psychology. You're lulling them into this false sense of security. If he is taking his ease, give him no rest. So you're disrupting their momentum. You're preventing them from getting complacent.
You got to keep them on their toes.
And then, if his forces are united, separate them. You're breaking down their cohesion.
Divide and conquer.
So all of these tactical suggestions really culminate in his core principle of attack, which is attack him where he's unprepared, appear where you are not expected. The element of surprise, that's huge for Sun Tzu.
It's like a recurring theme throughout his entire strategy.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the final point in this chapter, the importance of secrecy.
Keep your cards close to your vest.
Yeah. Sun Tzu emphasizes that your military devices leading to victory must not be divulged beforehand. The more your opponent knows, the less effective your strategies become. Surprise is a powerful weapon.
It's a force multiplier for sure.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Sun Tzu's laying plans, I think it's clear that this first chapter is about so much more than just military tactics.
It's about the mindset.
It's a blueprint for strategic thinking, period.
It's timeless.
It emphasizes preparation, understanding all the different factors at play, rigorous comparison, and the strategic use of deception to achieve your objectives.
The whole toolkit.
And these principles, even though they were written in the context of warfare centuries ago, they offer incredible insights for anyone who's facing complex challenges, in any domain.
Whether you're leading a team, negotiating a deal,
starting a business,
whatever it is, these principles apply.
It's about understanding the playing field, knowing your own strengths and weaknesses, but also your opponents, and then anticipating those potential moves before they even happen.
It's about being proactive, not reactive.
So here's a question for you, the listener. Think about Sun Tzu's emphasis on understanding all the conditions before you act. What would you say are the 5 constant factors in your own field of expertise or in some challenge you're facing right now?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And how could you apply this principle of creating unexpected advantages, that element of surprise, to shift your approach? Those are some powerful questions to ponder. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.